was engaged 3 times, three, before I met my husband. This was before I transitioned, so this is what we were working with. I called off all 3. The first one, I dated on and off the same dude literally from probably 12 years old up until I'd say like maybe 16. And we were like complete opposites. Like, he was on the football team of a different high school, and me, I got kicked out of my public high school. I had to get sent to behavioral school. Oh, by the way, I didn't get hot until I was like, I don't know, maybe like 20 years old. I remember one day I asked him, I'm like, hey, do you think I could be a cheerleader? He laughed and he's like, no. I was offended. I'm like, why? He's like, because I think you'd beat them all up. And I was like really upset he said that, and he's like, no, you don't understand, that's why I love you, that's why I'm attracted to you. But anyways, it didn't work. We were really young, had a lot of differences, didn't work out. So then I went through my convict phase, not me committing crimes yet, but I was dating a lot of convicts, you know what I mean? And this one actually, not only did he propose to me and get me like a really nice ring, but he also got my name and initials tattooed on him, like I think 3 times. I wonder if he got the other 2 covered up yet. I saw one was covered up and it's like one big black blob. We were so close to getting married, like we already started the paperwork. I still get mail addressed to me with his last name, but I backed out. I couldn't do it. Then I met my baby's daddy, and I remember I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at this, but it is fucking funny. I mean, not at the time. Well, to be honest, at the time, I didn't give a shit. I did not value my life to the level I should have at that time. But I remember he was driving me to, like, sort of this isolated area, and literally my thought process, because this was such a toxic relationship, it was not healthy. My thought process was, he is either gonna murk me or ask me to marry him. It's like, red flag, leave. Anyways, obviously I didn't go through with that one either, thank God. But after I transitioned, I stayed single for quite some time, and then I met my husband, and neither one of us were looking for anything serious. He was in training, about to go on to advanced training, with I think it was like he had just finished building construction technology, or he was finishing, and he was gonna go to this, like, commercial trucking thing or something in Maine. And me, I just wasn't looking for a relationship. But we couldn't stay away from each other. And I was just thinking about how funny it is, because when I first met my husband, actually this is before I met him in person, just started talking to him. I said, listen, I know you're gonna think this sounds crazy, but I know that I'm gonna marry you. I know that you're my soulmate. And it might sound nuts, but down the line when we're married, I'll say I told you so. And I do. I never once questioned it. Never got cold feet. It wasn't even like the question didn't even pop in my mind. I just knew. Hi, thank you for your question. So for those who are new here, my name is MJ. I'm a trans man. I have a biological son. He's almost 10 years old. I had him before my transition. His father recently passed away. However, we had a very, very, very volatile relationship. I don't really know how much I'm allowed to discuss on here, but just be warned that I will be talking about sensitive topics. In November of 2013, just 2 months after I gave birth to my son's father pled guilty in a courtroom to assaulting me. And that day, I left the courtroom with him and went back to live with him. This is just one of the many instances where, after documented attacks, I went back to my abuser. And a lot of people watching this would think, oh my God, that's so stupid, especially with a child involved. How could you go back to, like, a dangerous situation like that? But when you're in a DV situation, not only are you terrified for your life, for your child's life, but you're like in this whirlwind of like manipulation, and you actually believe that you might be safer in that situation. Actually, in some cases, that's true. You're manipulated into thinking that you're the one with the issue, like you're the one who's creating these problems. But about 6 months later, attacks happened all the time, by the way, but this was the 3rd attack that the police were actually involved in. My son's father assaulted me. However, due to my size at the time and his size, the police sided with him because they felt that due to his stature, he would have left more evidence on me. Now, my son was only, 6 months old, so there was no custody in place because we hadn't been to court for that yet. So I had to leave my son there because that was technically his legal residence because we lived with his dad. Just as a side note, if anyone has an opportunity to breastfeed, like after they have their child and they're in a situation like this, please take it. Because if I had been breastfeeding, I may have been able to take him with me. It was like a rainy night and I was literally crying in the road, screaming like a lunatic, talking about, please don't make me leave my baby. Please don't make me leave him. And of course, the next day I went back because I wasn't going to allow my kid to be in that situation alone. But I devised a plan. The attacks were going to happen no matter what. He'd attack me over folding his clothes wrong, but I was going to speed up the process. He had made me write a letter addressed to like CPS in the courts, saying that he was never violent with my son or I. And any time after he assaulted me and I said, this time I'm going to call the police, he would wave that note in front of my face like you ain't got a leg to stand on. So this time I ripped it out of his hand, and he was so mad. The assault was bad, but I just ran. He tried to block every exit, but I stole a cell phone, called 911, and left with my kid. There's still more, but that's basically it. That's when I really became a mother. So as a lot of you know, like me before I transitioned and me now, we kind of look like a couple that has like a restraining order against each other. A lot of times when I share my before pictures, people will be like, oh, you were so gorgeous, why did you do that to yourself? Stay hot for male attention and live a life of anguish or transition tough decision. But anyways, a lot of people are just shocked at how I looked before and how I look now. But I never realized how shocked, until this happened. One day I posted a status and I was referring to my old self. My old name is Megan. And I was like, isn't it funny that if Megan, like, if I saw myself now, you know, back then, like, I'd want to get with me. No, but for real, I always dated dudes that resembled this. I used to get mistaken for my baby's daddy. People always think my husband and I are brothers. Anyways, I was making a joke about it, and ooh, I struck a chord in this woman. And I didn't understand why until I realized, since I looked so different in the picture I presented of me, you know, before I transitioned, and at this point I had a beard, I looked like this. It didn't even register to this woman that I was trans, like I was a trans man. It didn't even register in her head. She literally thought that I was posting a status about how some woman named Megan would be lucky to date me and would be so in love with me and just enthralled with me. So she went hard. I was like, no, you don't understand. You know, Megan was me. You don't understand. And of course, to some people, that's like unfathomable. Like, you don't think of things like that. So she's still ramming in. I can't believe you'd say that against some innocent woman like Megan. You'd be lucky if Megan ever gave you attention, if Megan ever you. So finally, I was just like, listen, lady, I can Megan anytime I want. She was deadass going ham for the old me. Now realizing I was me. It was me. I am myself. Life is so fucking weird, man. I just spilled soda on my shirt. I spill everything, but listen, my husband and I, we were in, like the, not doctor's office, like the lab. I had to get my blood drawn because I'm on lithium, so I have to get it drawn regularly. And there was, so you know we have a new car, obviously. Did I not say it 9 million times? Shout out to AutoSense in Salem, New Hampshire. But, okay, so, anyways, I love this car. So, we parked, like, kind of in front or whatever. There's, like, hardly ever anybody there. And there was this old guy in there, and he's bitching. He was one of those, like, old people that, like, they just have a problem with everything. They like running into problems because that's what they talk about for, like, 9 years, you know what I mean? Like, we're gonna be the hot topic for the next month. And so he was like, that effing car outside is so big I couldn't even see the sign. You're not supposed to be in my videos. And I'm thinking, damn right, it's big. And it's all mine. It's like an effing submarine. This is like a submarine. Excuse you.
Do I need my phone?
You are in a submarine right now. Do you really need a phone? Not really. Excuse me, sir. I'm about to tell a sonnet of my life, okay? So, listen. When I got my first car, I was like almost 30. Not almost 30. I was like 25, 26, right? And I got my first car. It was almost 20 years old. My grandmother, she got cancer and she couldn't drive anymore. It happened very, very fast. And so she sold me her car for $1. I was forever grateful. I got a car for like a year for like $1. You know, it was a lot older. It needed a lot of work, but that was the only car I've ever owned. The car we were driving before this was not ours. I paid payments to use it, but it was not ours. So that's the only car I've ever owned. So like to have this gigantic boat in my name, are you kidding me? Life is freaking good. Life is good. Are you gonna be a knight in shining armor? Oh, and they also sent home his, his scripts, like his, I don't know, like the musicals, like the musical numbers, and so they're gonna send home the music too, so we can, practice. Are we gonna practice your lines? That was sneaky. He just snuck in the front seat. Shake my head. Listen to this, okay? I'm sitting on the bed, I'm on my phone, I'm in a wife beater, so like, you know, my guns or lack thereof are out, and it's out in the open, and my husband says to me, hey, you still got some muscles, and I'm like, thanks, you know what I mean? Because I'm used to my kid, who is literally like, what, a 3 to 4 foot ginger, telling me that I have hot dog arms all the time, so I was like, damn, it's nice that somebody notices, thank you. And my husband's like, oh, no, that's not what I meant. I meant we still have mussels in the freezer if you want to cook those for dinner. Get a lawyer. Guys, I need a new shower mat, and we came here to Bed Bath & Beyond. I think they're closed. Like, I think they don't exist anymore. Guys, this is so sad because Bed Bath & Beyond was one of my favorite stores next to Staples. No, like literally and figuratively. It's literally right next to Staples. We have to find somewhere else to go for it. It is like 2 or 3 days later, and I'm at Walmart, and I'm gonna look for a bath mat here. So let's see if we have any luck. I promised my mom I would get her one that's like very similar to the old one. So the other one was like clear, thin plastic and like a tealish blue. Look at all these. Listen, this is not the same material, but I feel like my mom would really love this because of the color. Guys, it's either between this one for the color or this for the material. This one, it smells like a jelly shoe, which in my opinion is one of the worst smells next to bodily fluids. So I don't know. My husband wants this one, but my dad has one like this, and he says that after a while they look like cow tripe, which I didn't know what that was. Apparently it's intestine. You guys, I'm gonna go with the gross smelling one, and I chose this one because 1, the material, and 2, our other one lasted forever and it was the same material, so this might last a long time. Also, it's cheaper, only by $2, but $7 is really cheap, so $7.96. This is what we're choosing. Yes, my birth name was Megan. I started transitioning like 8 years ago, so I don't give a shit. Oh no, and by the way, I am not in any way insinuating that no matter how long anyone's been transitioning, that someone shouldn't respect their chosen name or anything like that. But me, my birth name doesn't bring me any pain or humiliation, nothing like that. It's funny because so my birth name was Megan Julie. That's why I chose MJ, because I figured maybe it'd be easier on my friends and family. And then one time, my son had a sleep study that he needed to get done, and the nurse was like, MJ, what does that stand for? And at this point, I looked like this. I had my beard and everything, and I panicked, and I was like, Michael James. And I was just reading something I posted in 2020, and I had gone to a receptionist, and they're like, what's your name? I'm like, could be Megan, could be MJ, could be Michael. It's been a rough few years. But yeah, I'd prefer being called MJ because that's my legal name and that's what most people call me. But to me, intent is everything. And with my family, they do sometimes slip up and call me Megan, but they do try to call me MJ. And the fact that the intent is there is what's very important to me. Everybody is entitled to, set their own boundaries and decide what they feel is their bottom line. But for me, my bottom line is I don't want to get really bent out of shape and put a wedge between relationships that are very important to me just because somebody forgets to use my chosen name. I'm a parent. I have a 9-year-old. And even I came out when I was 26. So I have a 9-year-old. And if someone was like, okay, you need to call him this from this day forward, I would try, but I would sure as shit mess up. I mean, years to come. So imagine 26 years. That's a lot to get used to. Also, though, I've never referred to my previous name as my dead name. If that's someone's, boat, float it, whatever. I feel like that's so disrespectful to my parents if I were to do that. I mean, my parents, they, specifically chose my name. I was named after my great aunt who, she had polio. She wasn't supposed to live past 12. She lived, to be an old lady. My dad was so excited to, give me, I'm only 3rd generation Irish, so he was, super stoked to give me, the Irish spelling of Megan. So to me personally, I don't use the term dead name because I feel like that's so harsh. That's why I refer to it as my birth name. So there are some people in my family and some friends that still call me Megan, and that's okay because it's a lot to get used to. But I prefer MJ. Listen, this is one of those videos that I'm like, I don't know if I'll regret posting, but like my kid, I just can't. He is so dramatic. The only reason I'm sharing this is because I know that my kid's dad, as turbulent as our relationship was, like together and apart, I know he would find this fucking hilarious. So for those who don't know, like I got a 9-year-old and his dad passed away like 2 years ago, his biological father. And he knew his dad, like his dad was active in his life, but he struggled with addiction. And I'm very open with that about my son that, his father struggled with a disease and he was sick and, he lost his life to the disease, but it's nothing my son did. He loved him very much. My kid's been through like grief counseling and everything. Unfortunately, before my son's father passed, like he was in active addiction. He was getting in trouble. It was just not a safe situation, and I could not let my son around him. So my son really hadn't seen his dad on a regular basis since he was probably like 5, maybe 6, but probably 5. So his recollection of things is kind of limited. I don't, and listen, I know this is not a situation you laugh, but just listen. First of all, my kid, this is like last year, I forget. I did a video on it when it happened. He went around saying that his father got eaten by a shark. So I had to clear that up. Like, no, his dad was not, in fact, eaten by a shark. Well, the thing is, see, my son, he loves attention. He's a ham, like me. And he's very dramatic. The dramatics are just immeasurable. And lately, I think he's noticed that when people find out that his father has passed away, they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like very taken aback. They feel empathy for him. All eyes are on him. So he knows it gets a reaction now when he talks about his dad passing away. Except he's using it like a little too much to his advantage and being real dramatic about it. The other day, he wanted cheese pizza. It was a Celeste pizza. They take 3 minutes not even to cook. I'm like, it's not ready yet. How about you go in your room and when it's done, I'll let you know it's ready. Just go watch TV. He says to me, how about I have it when my dad isn't dead? Like, that's a little much. It's cheese pizza. All I can think is in school, if they ask him to, like, finish a worksheet or something, and he's like, how about I do multiplication when my dad isn't dead? Oh my, you can only use it so much, and it shouldn't be so extreme. I personally don't think my baby's daddy is in heaven. But wherever he is, he's laughing. One time I told my kid that he had to wait 20 minutes for a pizza to cook because it was one of those, like just a regular frozen pizza, not his usual Celeste ones. And I'm like, okay, it's going to take 20 more minutes to cook this. And he says, this is the baddest day I've ever known. So back in 2020, I joined this support group online for like ex-morons. It was literally called ex-morons. Listen, okay, before I got my life right, like I was a fucking mess. Like I did a lot of dumb shit. I was like, this group is right up my alley. I was prepared to like hear some hilarious stories and just kind of be like surrounded virtually with like people who had like changed their lives like me and could just look back and laugh. I was gonna make like an introduction post of all the hilarious dumb shit that I've done. And thank God, I did not. Because as time went on, a little while later, I started getting, a lot of targeted advertising and stuff, and a lot of it was, like, real Christian and stuff, and, like, no hate, whatever. I just was like, why is this directed towards me? But then, a post from that group came up on my timeline. And you might be thinking, why would an ex-moron group have anything to do with religion? Well, that's what I was thinking. But there was a very good reason. Because it was an ex-Mormon group. Mormon! Looks like I'm still fucking stupid. Listen, I'm married to, like, the most supportive man in this world. But he is not somebody you want around you when you're having a panic attack. I've talked about how, like, I deal with, chronic anxiety, panic attacks. And my husband, bless his heart, you don't want him in the room with you when you're going through it. I remember one time during the pandemic, right? I was having such a bad panic attack, I had to excuse myself and shut myself in the room. And my husband thought this is the perfect time to let me know about all these shortages, these food shortages, gas shortages, just tons of shortages in the world. I'm sitting there hyperventilating, and he's like, man, we really gotta stock up on some beef, some pork, some chicken. Go away! But possibly my favorite example of this, and by the way, he doesn't mean to be this way. I'm like in the midst of another panic attack, right? I'm sitting on the bed and I'm just trying to calm down, and he knows I'm anxious, so he comes over and he tries to comfort me. He's like, don't worry, I'll stay in here with you. I'm gonna ride this out with you. Do you mind if I put on Pet Cemetery? Get out! Man, I got so many comments on that video. Since when do y'all give a shit how I pronounce anything? My father's from Massachusetts. My mother was born in Mississippi, then moved to Japan, then moved back to New Hampshire, down south again, back to New Hampshire. You guys are lucky you can understand me at all. Let's be for real. But I'll tell you one thing. If you ever came to like New Hampshire, Massachusetts, anywhere, and you were talking about a Newfoundland dog, and you said, hi, I'm inquiring about a Newfoundland, they'd end up handing you like a traveling tourist pamphlet because they would think you're looking for new land. Don't nobody talk like that here. Get the fuck out. A lot of people ask me, how do you deal with all the hate you get, all the negativity? It is very rare for me to be like heavily offended by anything any troll says, and that's because I'm raising their blueprint. Except my kid's actually funny, you know what I mean? My kid knows I'm transgender. I've been like this pretty much his whole life almost. When I first started transitioning and, I was going to be on hormones, getting surgery, I had to find, like, an age-appropriate way to address it. And he dropped on the floor. He was devastated. He was like, my life will never make sense. Everything is over. I'm just kidding. He said, cool, I want pizza. Kids don't fucking care. As long as you're safe, you're reliable, you're compassionate, you provide a loving home, their needs are met, they don't give a shit how you identify. What my kid does care about is causing chaos. And he loves not only trolling me, but trolling society as a whole when it comes to me being trans. Case in point one. He comes up to me one day, he's like, hey, are you a man? I'm like, we've been through this, like I was born a girl, like you know. This dude says to me, then what's up with the voice? My husband is like a fucking lumberjack. He's like 6 feet tall, 380, he's gigantic. And me, I look like I just served like a 10-year bid. So I've talked in the past about how we obviously get weird looks, like it's gonna happen, it's life. But I'm always terrified because people are so weirded out by our dynamic that like somebody's gonna think I'm like kidnapping my own kid. And my son knows this, he's aware of this fear. So sometimes when we're in a drive-thru, he will slowly roll down his window and say, help me. Thank God most people around here know who I am. But the best one, he plays on the feelings of these, transphobic, ultra-right-wing people like a freaking fiddle. He only does this when we're in situations where, it's usually typically a lot of, older, upper-class women, if we're in a store that's, kind of ritzy. And he'll look up at me and go, are you male or female? This dude knows. He's trolling y'all. He does it because then they're gonna look at me like... and they'll have a story for a fucking month. Deborah, you'll never believe the tragedy. I was just at Chico's, okay? And there was somebody I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, and obviously their child couldn't tell either. Traumatized for life. Blueprint. I have 3 different voices. Angry Bostonian telling a story. I can also scrap in this voice. I mean scrap, Not scrapbooking, because that would be my second voice, which is my customer service voice. I use this one if I'm on the phone, if I need to talk to my son's teachers. Anything that needs to be professional is done in my customer service voice. But then I also have my LOIS GRIFFIN voice, and I'd say this is my pretty usual voice. I actually used to get made fun of for it, before I transitioned even, because I still got a heavy, New England accent, but my voice is much higher. So those are the 3 vocal modes of MJ. Now listen, I don't honestly really notice my accent or my family's accent. I'm from New Hampshire, my family is from Massachusetts, and I just kind of don't really notice it, except for this one time. Now, if you're from Massachusetts, especially if you come from like an Irish or Italian like Catholic family, your family is probably like mine and they make up these like insane terms for things that you just grow up thinking that it's normal. I was in middle school before I realized that loose mousies was not a universal term for diarrhea. Yeah, I was at my friend's house one day. I'm like, yeah, I don't feel good. I think I got the loose mousies. Her mom started dying laughing. She's like, what the fuck is a loose mousie? I'm like, like diarrhea. Unbeknownst to me, only my family said that. Anyways, people from Massachusetts, their families just be like making up words for shit. It's funny as hell though. If a shirt is too small for you, it's a medium. If someone's nuts, they're a head case, they're tapped. She is tapped, kid. Well, anyways, okay, one time, this is before I transitioned, you know what I mean, and I was dating this dude from Somerville. Now, people from Somerville, they're a whole nother breed. Not in a bad way, it's just, I've never met somebody from Somerville who didn't know how to fight, but I've also never met a woman from Somerville that knows how to say thank you. You're gonna have fun when you go there, but you might piss your pants a little. Anyways, like I said, I was dating this dude, right? And he was always in and out of jail, and he wanted to get in touch with his friend who was currently still incarcerated, okay? So they got those write-a-prisoner pen pal sites or whatever. So he asked me to look his friend up on there so he can get his address, his current, location. So I did, and we got it and everything, whatever. It was a normal profile. Except this one we found was specifically for dating. And when you scrolled down to the bottom, it said interested in men and women. And I don't give a shit, I don't give a fuck, obviously. But I'll never forget. When the dude I was dating saw that, he just about fell back and was like, you mean, you're saying he's bi-curious? Bi-curious? Not bisexual, bi-curious? So from the ages of 15 to 19, I was a total catfish. And that's for two reasons. Number one, I was fat. I'm fat now, but being fat back then as a feminine woman, totally different experience. We didn't have body positive or acceptance, movements or nothing like that. I am so grateful that it's that way now because I would never want any young girl or woman to go through what I went through. Chicks like me back then, 20 years ago, we had to take one for the team. I'd date dudes who had no license. They'd be drunk every weekend. They would smell like Italian subs 24/7. And I would have to act like they were doing me a favor by dating me just because I was fat. So anyways, that's the first reason I used to catfish, okay? Because, that causes a complex. I had self-esteem issues. It was hard to date while big. But at the same token, we're gonna come to number two. I didn't really like being with cis dudes. And I don't want to hear your fucking shit. I don't want to be called cis. Y'all will literally come to my page, call me everything under the sun, and I'll just be baking a fucking pancake. Right to the fucking mayor. Anyways, I didn't like cis men. I didn't want to be intimate with them. And see, I found a loophole. I was able to convince my friends and family, so I thought, that I was straight by being in heterosexual relationships with men that I met online that I never actually had to meet in person. In order to achieve this, I would typically date men in the army or any form of military or men in prison. I know two very different demographics, but they had one thing in common. They were far away, and I didn't have to see them. So it didn't matter if I sent them pictures where I didn't look that big or it was really flattering. I used Adobe Photoshop to smooth out all my skin. It didn't matter. They weren't ever gonna fucking see me. Who gives a shit? So one time, okay, I'm dating this dude and he's in prison. He was a nice guy, only in there for 3 attempted murders. Okay, maybe not a nice guy. I remember he was so scary looking, but it was so funny because he'd always go around singing, got the sand on my toes and a wrinkle in my nose, or whatever. He loved that song, Colby Kylate, whatever, he loved it. Anyways, he asked me to marry him. Mind you, I'm only probably 18 years old, and he got me this amazing ring from Belden Jewelers. It was really nice. Oh, as just a PS, I wasn't sending these dudes money. I didn't pay for any commissary, baby. One of them helped put me through college. But anyways, he needed to ask for my ring size. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, just send it to me. I can go get it resized. It's really no problem at all. He's like, no, just tell me. He would not take no for an answer. I've always had fat, pudgy hands. So I told him, a 10.5, and he didn't fucking know. So he calls up his grandmother and tells her so she can get it resized. Grandmother's like, damn, that's kind of a really big size. So that's how I was outed by Nana. So earlier I got a comment about how my kid would do well in theater because, he's so dramatic. And it's so funny because there was a particular incident that happened that caused his therapist to really want him to be put into theater. We didn't do it because it was at the time of the pandemic and we were really nervous. But let me tell you about this incident. If somebody told me that this happened, I would think that they're full of shit, but I got the paperwork. I saved it. I will forever. So one day my kid starts holding his stomach and screaming, saying he's gonna have a baby. Honestly, I thought maybe he just had a stomach ache or whatever, maybe he was a little constipated, whatever, but I called his doctor just in case, and they're like, you need to immediately take him to the ER. So the staff takes us to the room, at the emergency room, and when my kid saw the hospital bed, the gurney, whatever it is, this is literally him. He was so excited. And he keeps talking about having this baby. Some things he told us before the doctor got in was that it was going to be a half alien baby, and also he was going to name it Jack. Well, then the ER doctor comes in, right? I explain the situation, and he's still going on about how he's going to have a baby. And he is so fucking excited. The ER doctor actually had to leave because she was trying so hard not to laugh. I'm like half mortified, but I become fully mortified when the ER doctor checks him over and says, nope, this is a completely normal exam, nothing is wrong. And my kid nonchalantly jumped off the hospital bed and said, well, guess the baby didn't make it. To add insult to injury, we definitely got trolled by the hospital staff, because for our discharge paperwork, they gave us instructions on how to care for a newborn. Well, baby checkup under 1 month. Your baby just had a routine checkup to check how well he or she is growing. And then it goes on for newborn care. This was October of 2021. My kid was 8. And listen, I know there's going to be people like, oh my God, your kid is confused because you're a trans man and you gave birth. We got to the bottom of it. It's because my kid was watching Call the Midwife. My mom watches it, and apparently he was getting really into it lately. Literally only our lives. So when it comes to my baby's daddy and I got a baby's daddy. Or I had one. Past tense. I'll get to that. But anyways, when it comes to my baby's daddy and I, our whole entire relationship was an argument. We were known for that, for fighting obnoxiously in public. We didn't give a shit. I mean, he was strung out half the time. I was off meds. It's like, let's go, baby. You feeling froggy? All the time was go time. Listen, when he found out I was married, ring ring, tried to call me, right? This is not that long ago, a couple of years ago. I had lawyered up at this point. I'm like, I ain't answering. Are you kidding me? He went and OD'd on Carolyn, and it's like, all right, you did that, bro. Now every wedding anniversary. Yep, you did that. Everything was a fight, though. Everything. And some of the fights was so ridiculous. And unfortunately for the both of us, I publicly recorded all of them by sharing updates on how hilarious they were. After we stopped being mad at each other. Listen, okay, so the first one. I get pregnant, right? My baby's daddy, he was always calling me a spoiled brat and shit. And he says to me, I wonder if our kid is gonna be hood like me or a yuppie like you. And I'm like, I don't fucking know. He could be both. And my baby's daddy paused for a minute, like he had a moment of clarity, and he's like, yeah, he could end up like Kanye. One time we fought about a traffic light. Well, technically we had 2 fights at a traffic light, because there was that one time where I tried to tuck and roll out of the moving car and he pulled me back in and we got followed by a good Samaritan. But anyways, I'm looking at the traffic lights, right? And I'm like, why the hell did they have to pick such boring fucking colors for traffic lights? And he's like, people need to know. They need to know when to stop. I mean, red means stop. And I'm like, yeah, they need to know. They need traffic signals. Does it have to be boring? No. He's like, what do you suggest? What do you suggest that this traffic light, what color should they be? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe, it doesn't even have to be a color. Maybe they could be tinsel. For the record, I was probably fried out of my brain. And he was like, not everything is a fucking winter wonderland, Megan. That's my old name. Plot twist. Our kid talks about Christmas just about 365 days of the year. Looks like we made an elf. And this one I've told before, but it's my absolute favorite. I was doing one of those would you still date me if things. I'm like, would you still date me if I was ugly? For reference, this was me as a girl. He's like, no. I'm like, you wouldn't date me if I was ugly? So you're only with me because of my looks? What about my personality? My personality would be the same. He goes, your personality sucks. Oh my god, so this question made me want to look back and see, like, where I was exactly 10, or almost exactly 10 years ago from now. And just as a forewarning, I will be talking about some pretty sensitive topics, because it's been a ride. Okay, so just for context, this is what I looked like when I first met my son's father. I was struggling very bad in a lot of areas, but mainly from an eating disorder. So, as you can imagine, getting pregnant was not easy dealing with that, especially because you pretty much like have to gain weight, especially if you're not at an adequate weight. Literally, this is right after I had my son, and I was bragging about like working like upwards of like 70 to 80 minutes a day at one time. And I did that when I was pregnant too. I literally counted the calorie of every morsel, no exaggeration, that went into my mouth. And if I went like even 800 to 1,000 calories over, I was gonna find a way to burn it. Then I found this gem. The reason why I had court in this picture is because, and I don't even know if I'm allowed to say the word, so, my baby's daddy, it rhymes with asphalted me. So the state of New Hampshire actually put a restraining order on him so that he couldn't see my son or I, and he ended up pleading guilty to asphalting me. I think it was his court date that we were going to. If we were allowed to be seen together, then it had to be his court date. Which brings me to these next updates I found. These statuses talking about how I miss him and I just want to go back home. I was talking about going back to a home where I was regularly in very dangerous situations with him. I mean, the cops were involved several times, but in this instance, when it was so bad that they took over and put a restraining order on, I wasn't supposed to see him. So I had to stay with family, and literally, I just thought about how much I missed him all the time. Meanwhile, he had just got bailed out of jail for a charge where I was the victim. Then I get a kick out of this, okay? First of all, look at this photo. This is a photo of me and my baby's daddy. I don't share pictures of him because he's passed on, and I just, without his consent, I don't feel like it's right. Like, when I talk about my story, like, these are things that happened to me where I was the victim, so I feel like I have a right to speak out about it. But this was a picture. It looks like we were just, like, out at a restaurant, you know, having a good time. I actually posted this when I was waiting out a restraining order that was on him. So everybody would think like, oh, that's such a cute picture together. Meanwhile, legally, we can't even be seen with one another. And I get a kick out of this one. Telling people why they should leave their marriage if their spouse tries to tell them what to do. I couldn't even go to college. In this picture, right after he accused me of sleeping with his father, his own dad. If I could predict what, like, the biggest struggle we're gonna have with my son is when he, like, gets older and stuff, it's gonna be knowing when to take him seriously. Like I said, my kid is so dramatic. He wanted us to call an ambulance the other day because he had the hiccups. When I told him I wouldn't, he settled for Cheetos. He's like, all right, I just need Cheetos. Big jump. Well, my kid, he doesn't really like going to school anymore. He's at that age, you know, it's common. He doesn't want to go. He'd rather stay home on electronics all day. And we go through this routine, like, every night before bed, where he always asks, like, if he was something else or somebody else, would he still have to go to school the next day? Like, he'll think of random animals, like, if I was a shark, would I have to go to school? If I was a violin, would I have to go to school? So this particular night, he was like, if I was a cheeseburger, would I have to go to school? My husband's like, yeah, not only would you still have to enter the building and go to school, but then midday you'd get eaten. So, count your blessings. Then he's like, if I was a whale, would I have to go to school? We're like, yes, whales have special schools that they, like, form and go to. I don't know. So then he looks at me and he says, what if I was dead? I'm like, oh my God. Do you need to talk? We need to sit down. Like, do you need to, like, we need to do a deep dive. Like, that's not okay. I'm thinking if this kid would rather than go to school, something bad must be happening, and I'm getting to the bottom of it. And I did. I did get to the bottom of why he detests school, doesn't want to go, and it's so absolutely awful. He can't have his phone all day. That's it. And see, the thing is, even though, like, you know, me, my family, we're all, like, you know, getting pretty in tune with how OD he can be, how dramatic. His parents know, his teachers know. But, like, high key, I am worried about, like, the general public because they don't know. Listen, so I got, like, some mild beef, like, not even mild, I'd say, like, lukewarm beef with one of my neighbors. And their house is right next to my son's room, okay? Now, they've called the 5-0s on me over a chicken. A 3-pound chicken. Now, my kid, he wakes up every day, anywhere from 3 to 6 a.m. sharp. Immediately puts music on. Not just any music. Most recently, it's Lady Gaga. Anything very loud, very stimulating. And I don't want to hear, oh my God, see, you turn your kids gay. You son of a I don't even listen to Lady Gaga. I mean, no shade, she's great, just not my style. Listen, when I went to my son's first IEP meeting in the public school system, I left knowing 2 things. 1, he doesn't want to learn Spanish, and 2, he loves Queen. But he likes chicks. I mean, he's almost 10 years old, we know. Specifically Latinas. I wish I didn't know that, but unfortunately I do. Not that Latinas aren't beautiful and great. You know what I mean. He's my kid. I don't want to know. I ran out of time.